back to Matters Education. And with me in studio, two amazing gentlemen, one from Twaweza, and that's Amos Kaburu to my extreme right. Karibu sana, welcome to the program. And then Vice Chancellor Masinda Muliro University, Professor Frederick Otieno, good morning and welcome to New Day.
Good morning, morning to viewers, and thank you for having us.
Karibu sana, I am just indeed delighted. We opened schools yesterday, and we've seen what's happening. Dr. Fred Matiang'i is on the spot. First, before we look at what you do, what's your take? What's on your mind when it comes to what's been happening the last 48 hours? Starting with you, sir.
No, thank you very much. I think every time there is change in anything, there will be reactions that vary from one extreme to another. What we can say, however, is that change is inevitable, and if it is well managed, it should, by and large, bring about progress. So we don't stick in the same position.
Yeah.
And with that change, we can improve on whatever we've done and so forth. But in any system of that nature, we need wide consultation.
That's right.
Consultation with the various stakeholders,
right,
who may understand some of the finer details better than all of us. And yes, but again, it's normally a very tricky balancing act because you don't want to be consulting indefinitely.
That's true.
Yeah. So,
sir.
Thank you, Tim, and Happy New Year to our viewers.
Happy New Year to you.
The ostrich was hiding the head in the sand, and we spoke about it more than a year ago, that we were not quite ready, and it was, let's push, we are ready, come 2nd of January, we're rolling it out. And it's amazing and quite shocking that couldn't we be aware that such a systemic change requires parliamentary approval before it rolls out.
That's true.
And so even the sessional paper has not been tabled in Parliament, which therefore means that you cannot not roll out the curriculum on 2nd of January. So quite unfortunate. It's a good system, needs to be working, but all these things are clear manifestation of what we've always cried, that the government was not ready to implement the new curriculum.
So we're seeing this happening. Speculations are very rife that this could just not, it wouldn't roll out as expected. It could be pushed to a few months later or even a year. We don't know what's going to be the outcome of the meeting.
The steering committee, which is chaired by the cabinet secretary, is sitting today.
Yes.
It's a 36-member committee,
right,
drawing from different stakeholders.
Yes, sir.
Just to epitomize the aspect of consultation. I must also admit that this has been one of the most consultative process as far as curriculum reforms are concerned.
Yeah.
If you trace from history, from the first commission of 1909, the Fraser Commission,
right,
this has been the most consultative process, culminating in more than 7 years, since 2010, when discussions around reform started. So no one can deny this. It's just that the levels, as Prof is saying, is what will differ at certain points. And it's also impossible just to tell what is absolute or how much consultation is enough. But as the steering committee sits today, they have to make a decision which has to look at to receive the report of the technical committee.
Yes.
And the technical committee is what was chaired by the KICD, because they are the lead in terms of designing the curriculum and how it's supposed to be rolled out. There were actually 3 committees. There was a committee on programs, which was designing the curriculum itself. There was a committee on capacity development, which was training teachers and such. Then there was a committee on finance.
Right.
So all these committees are supposed to present their report today. And after this report has been tabled, they are supposed to adopt a sessional paper which is supposed to be taken to Parliament.
Yeah.
And it's based on this sessional paper that Parliament will give an approval. Looking at how Parliament is situated, I don't think that the government will have a problem, the sessional paper going through. The sessional paper will go through. Yes. However, these process are just likely to take time. Maybe a minimum of give it maybe 1 month, because there are aspects to do with it will just have to go through the ordinary legislation process.
Correct.
Which has a bill has to be introduced in Parliament by maybe the leader of the majority or maybe the Education Committee, led by Honorable Meli. Then it goes through the reading and all those subsequent processes, public participation as it's required.
Wow.
So this is quite another process that therefore has to come.
But
then it has to be ascended to by the president.
Yeah.
Then it has also to be given a date of commencement.
Oh
so
my.
all these things, we're talking about the minimum you can give it maybe now another 3 months. And this is actually a twist that the curriculum reform process has never been quite covert in terms of speaking it out what it will really mean in terms of the rollout. Because you cannot roll out a curriculum without a necessary regulatory and legal framework that is
Do you agree with that, sir?
I think so, yes. By and large, it's true. And you know, as I said earlier on, you know, the question we have to ask ourselves is, do we want to make a leap into the developed world bracket, or do we want to remain where we are? And the unfortunate thing is, we aspire, but if you are aspiring, you can move very slowly and you will never get there, because those countries are also not static. They continue to improve. And so we need sometimes to make a quantum leap. And it is that which is disruptive. And so I agree with my colleague fully that sometimes you need to do something that is out of the ordinary.
Out of the ordinary.
Yes.
Okay, there two agree that we need to do that which is out of the ordinary. We take a break right now. When we come back, we'll look at in details matters education. We also look at in details Masinda Muliro University. It's a university that has caught my eye, and that's why we have the professor here in Twaweza. We'll look at that in details. This is New Day. Let's keep the conversations going. The hashtag to use is New Day KE. Don't go away. We'll be right back. I've got the quote of the day coming right up. And welcome back. This is New Day, where we get to ask the questions which you would definitely ask. And if you have questions to ask the panel which is sitting with me on matters education, don't hesitate. Feedback very quickly. Hashtag to use is New Day KE. To my immediate right is Professor Frederick Otieno from Masinda Muliro University and Amos Kaburu from Twaweza to my far right, and we are looking at matters education. But first, before we delve into higher education in details, because that is also a subject of discussion, let's find out what happens at Twaweza. How long has it been there, and what do you do there?
Thank you, Tim. Twaweza is just as the name is. Twaweza talks about the impetus of people to bring about the desired change. Yes. That people play a critical role in terms of bring about the change that they want. And in fact, we say that don't just sit there, do something. Do something. Because it's ni mimi, ni wewe, kwa hivyo ni sisi, Twaweza. That's all about that we do. So we work a lot in terms of looking at the role information plays in terms of influencing attitudes, practices in order to bring about desired change, big time, that you require massive evidence, you require to interact with this information. So our role is to collect this information, curate it, present it, basically for public debate that will stimulate people to take action. And towards the end, we're looking at something called public agency, which is that governments and people can work together towards finding solutions to what is ailing people. Because there's a big divide between citizens and the government. Governments think that they are working for people. People think that the government does not work for them. I'm speaking about this because we work in the 3 countries, Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania, and also recently registered in the US. So we're looking at what is it that citizens and government can begin to look at and say that we're speaking the same language.
What is the driving philosophy behind Twaweza?
As I've said, it's about people. People need to take an active role. Public participation is very, very critical. As democracy says, if we are not involved, then it's not our decision. So it's about getting more people involved, because at the end of the day, it leads to better decisions that are made by the state. So we work largely in matters of research. We conduct massive researches, especially in education and governance. And one of our pioneer researches, which has influenced globally the discussion, has been the Uwezo study, which has largely focused on learning outcomes. And one of the evidence we have, 7 years ago, we were arguing that children are leaving schools without skills. Children are leaving schools without basic knowledge.
That's true.
And when we first brought out our report that 10% of class 8 were leaving without mastering class 2 skills, everyone was doubting. Now look at the KCSE results. They are clear manifestation when you have got more than 200,000 children leaving school getting a D minus, 250,000 getting a D minus and an E, is a clear manifestation of the learning crisis that is global. And now the SDG number 4 is very, very critical in terms of looking at matters quality education, that we need to measure education not in terms of access, not in terms of the impressive numbers of the teachers and the infrastructure, but we need now to shift the discussion, the paradigm, and ask ourselves, what are children learning at the end of the cycle, rather than just these inputs that we keep on pumping and investing in more money, more money. Can we get value for what we are investing so that we have got a better return on the investment of education?
You've talked about 3 countries where it's worked, and obviously there's also in the United States. But let's look at the region. Where is it successful?
I would say that working on change is a very, very long process because it's dealing with the issues of attitudes, it's dealing with the issues of practices and how people are socialized. So it doesn't necessarily, it's not instant coffee. So what we've been working on are trying to find out small options and solutions that you really need to identify what you call what works. For instance, in education, how do you fix an education system for it to work? If you're having problems with the teachers who cannot interpret the curriculum, what is it that you need to do? We've been conducting something called surveys of enacted curriculum to look at what is it that ails our curriculum. And so that even as we are working on curriculum reforms, which we have heavily been involved in this curriculum reforms process, is that you require evidence. And we can say that in Kenya, for instance, evidence from Twaweza has really been used, and is out of this that the government decided to implement the large Tusome program. Uganda has also just reviewed its curriculum. Tanzania has also done the same, and this is largely driven by the evidence that we have been generating for the last 7 years, because we are the largest independent research in education, actually in the whole of Africa, because annually we assess more than 500,000 children. 500,000 children. Nobody has such scale and such infrastructure to deploy people and to assess this within a very short period of time, finish it, and even issue what you call instant feedback. How have children perform? Speak to government. What do you need to do to fix the learning crisis?
You're very passionate about this. All right, great. Hold that thought for a few minutes, because we will be looking at that in detail. But Professor Otieno, Professor Frederick Otieno, I want to know something about you. Tell us something about you. I want to know you as a person first before I look at Masinde Muliro University.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Professor Engineer Fred Otieno is a Kenyan who I'm an average Kenyan born in the rural areas. I went to school in the rural areas. I went on to secondary and high school, and then University of Nairobi, where I did a Bachelor of Science degree in civil engineering.
Yes, sir.
And then subsequently I did a bit of practicing in a consultant's world. Then I went on to do my master's degree and a doctorate degree in civil engineering at the University of Newcastle upon time in the United Kingdom.
That's right.
When I came back, I went back into academia. For a while, I was a research fellow at the Technology Center in Kenyatta University. And then I moved on to the University of Nairobi, where I was a lecturer in the Department of Civil Engineering. And concurrently, I did a lot of consulting work for the World Bank, for UNDP, government, etc. And after that, in 1994, early 94, I left the country. And I went on to South Africa, where I stayed for 20 years. And in South Africa, we don't have time to go into what I did there, but I rose through the ranks to become a full professor of civil engineering.
That's right.
I was also head of Department of Civil Engineering, a Dean of Engineering, Deputy Vice Chancellor.
Right.
And then at that point, I decided that I needed to come back to my country and give back to my people. And that is when I applied for this job at Masinde Muliro, and I got it, and I came back. And while in South Africa, maybe for the benefit of our viewers,
that's right,
I was privileged to be involved in a lot of exciting initiatives. I was chairman of a number of boards there, large boards.
Yes.
We founded what was Johannesburg's first company, Pick It Up, charged with managing solid waste in the entire city of Johannesburg. I was also vice chairman of the Water Research Commission in South Africa and a board member. I was also a board member on the South African National Roads Agency.
Right.
Which agency we can say without a shadow of doubt that is the most successful agency on this continent. We ensured that the roads in South Africa are what they are through regular maintenance and so forth. And also more recently I was a board member and chair of the risk committee for the Rand Water Board, which is the largest water board in the continent.
Largest water board in the continent.
Yes, and so the work of risk, it is one thing, if you allow me, that I would like to share with our viewers.
Sure.
The whole concept of risk management is something we don't appreciate much in our country here. Because we wait until things go wrong and then we start running around to address that. And I think what my colleague Kaburu talked about, even in the education sector, they are partly managing that risk because they look at the entire chain and then they look at where the issues are likely to occur and then take corrective measures to minimize the likelihood of that risk occurring and or the impact of that risk should it occur. So and that is me. I am generally a very results driven. I have management style which is one that says you must perform at your best. You must give quality to whatever you do. And in doing that, I have run into some turbulence in our country here.
Turbulence? The lecturer strike was one of those.
Yes, but you know, somebody has to change something in our country here.
Someone has to change.
Yes.
But when I listen to you, it's quite an interesting CV because after staying 20 years in South Africa, you came and applied for the job at Masinde Muliro University. What was the status like there, then? And what's the status of Masinde Muliro University? I'm learning it's 4 years since you've been there. What was the before and after? What did you implement after getting on board?
Okay, no, thank you very much. When I came to Masinde Muliro in December 2013, the condition was deplorable. It was a university which was virtually on the brink of collapse. Everything was coming to a standstill.
Yes.
For example, salaries were not paid on time.
Yes.
People got salaries like on the 20th of the following month. Suppliers were never paid. They stopped supplying goods and services to the university. Part-time lecturers were never paid, so nobody was willing to teach at Masinde Muliro.
Yes.
The university owed Kenya Revenue Authority more than 1 billion Kenya shillings. So for almost 6-7 years, the Masinde Muliro University of Science and Technology had not been remitting taxes to Kenya Revenue Authority.
Really?
Yes, 1 billion shillings.
Wow.
And other statutory deductions like pensions, like NSSF, like NHIF, were never being paid.
And then that you changed?
We have changed that.
Wow, interesting.
And changing that comes with hard work and discipline. We have had to take hard decisions. And those are decisions which I would like to share with our viewers. I'm prepared, for the sake of my country, to take those hard decisions. And so what have we done? We have entered into an agreement with Kenya Revenue Authority.
Yes.
First of all, I think somebody in government should have been holding those people accountable. For that mess.
Yeah.
Sadly, those people still walk around. They are the ones inciting everybody around against my leadership, but that is for another day.
That's for another day.
But those people still walk around. We entered into an agreement with Kenya Revenue Authority to be paying upwards, we were paying 28 million shillings every month to try and clear this burden.
Interesting.
Suppliers today are paid within 90 days of supplying goods and services to the university.
Now, these are the operations around the university, but I also want to look at it from a larger perspective because both of us, actually all of us, were affected in 2017. The elections, it was an electioneering year, and the lecturer strike was one of the issues that were big last year. We don't know whether it's going to be an issue this year. But both of you, when you look at 2017, how were you affected? Let's start with you, Amos Kaburu.
Thank you. I'm a student in one of the local universities doing my PhD studies. And so there's been a lot of anxiety and just around the whole of 2017. But actually, it's important to focus on what Prof is mentioning, that higher education in this country requires some revitalization. It requires a paradigm shift.
Yes.
It requires a rethinking in terms of how it is designed and how it is implemented if it has to achieve the intended purpose. One of the things would be that, and I've argued this, these are my personal views, that we are not optimizing what higher education is capable of doing in this country. I think President Kibaki had a very good vision in terms of expanding university education in this country. But I think nobody has been able to grasp specifically what the old man really envisioned as a well-functioning university education in this country that is capable of generating human resource for export and for such that will drive innovation, and so that universities will live up to their promises. I think that if the government had lived true to its intention as it was envisioned in the Jubilee government agenda, that it will devote 1% of its of its revenue towards research. That is close to 23 billion. It's a lot of money that would have done a lot.
The president, I mean, he's set to preside over the graduation of Kibabi University.
Yes.
And he said exactly what you're talking about.
Yes,
more funds going into research.
Yes, more funds. But even not just thing around more funds going into research. There is a lot of money that is in the development world. And Prof has mentioned, he consulted for World Bank, UNDP. These are large institutions that have got a lot of money with a lot of interest in policy research. If there was a closer link in terms of a system that works, then you will be able to collect all this money from wherever it is. Then you have got an evidence-driven policy process as opposed to how it is. Because when you go to our universities and look at what students are studying, you really can't call them studies. And you've got challenges in terms of the human resources at the universities. People who are teaching there, their capacity is really to design researchers that could provide solutions to the challenges that we face, whether it's in education. For instance, this conversation we're having about education, how much of it have universities contributed? I think if there is, if there is actually one sector that has largely been left out of this curriculum reform process, they are actually universities. And yet actually they needed to be the ones who are driving the force. If you look at, you go to Easy University, it's actually managed to pull some of the best brains in education in Kenya. You go to Kenyatta University, it's got a very good faculty of education. You go to University of Nairobi, it's a good faculty members of the University of Nairobi. Okay, one or two like Professor Riecha sitting in the steering committee. But I think the universities will have driven the agenda better.
Than the ones who are sitting right now?
No, I mean, what I mean is that as an institution, not just the individuals, but I think as an institution. And all this has got to do with, one, the way universities are designed to be managed, the structural approach up there. And that's why the good work that Professor is doing at Mmust is really being fought, because maybe not. That's what ails our system.
Professor, since you took over Masinda Muliro University as a Vice Chancellor, a section of people have been accusing you of abuse of office, embezzlement of funds, and employment irregularities. If you could tell us kindly, how are you running the university?
Well, thank you very much. I think none of that is true. I think it is laughable. But I am not that person. I will never be, and I have never been.
And so you've cleared your name on air.
I will clear it.
Yes,
anywhere I'm given the opportunity, I'll do that. But let's face it. I don't have, when you talk of employment irregularities, the Vice Chancellor does not employ people at the university.
That's true.
There is a Deputy Vice Chancellor in charge of Administration and Finance, and there is a committee, both the Council Committee and a Management Committee, who shortlist and interview and hire people. The Vice Chancellor is not an employer in himself at the university.
That's true.
So you cannot talk of employment irregularities and then single out an individual. Yes, the buck stops with me as a VC, but there are officers who are paid salaries to do that work. Now, when you talk of embezzlement of funds, I mean, that is laughable. I want again on national TV to say that Otieno, as you see me, I cannot embezzle funds. If I took, today, if you gave me 5 or 10 million shillings, I would find it a problem to take it to my house, because I brought up my children knowing that you do not touch what does not belong to you.
Absolutely.
So I would have to explain to them, where did I get this money? And so for me, I would be leading a lie. I would have been leading a lie to my children for the last 35 years.
Correct.
Yeah, and that I'm not prepared to deviate from that principle at this late hour in my career.
True.
So there is nothing like embezzlement of funds. And when you say the other one is, what do they call it? Abuse of office.
Yeah.
What is abuse of office? What is abuse of office? We need to be a bit specific. And we are prepared to cooperate with the various organs of government.
Yes.
So that they step forward and tell us what is it that they perceive to be abuse of office. You clearly say this on this date you did this and that and
That's
that.
true.
And we will do it. You know, I belong to the Institute of Directors in South Africa, and I chair the ethics committee of that institute. I think on the African continent, that is the most ethical body on this continent.
Interesting.
I could not have been chairing that if I was not ethically upright.
Let's
Not
move,
at all.
let's move away from you, because obviously I seem to be putting so much spot on you. How are universities going to recover over time lost during the university strike? Or the lecturer strike,
That's right.
rather, yeah.
Yes, I think they will. We have to. And that's the challenge is on us as leaders at the universities, working with our various senates and lecturers to put in place a formula which does not compromise the quality of education that we provide at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole question of time that you spend in delivery is important. And I know, again, one day when we have time, we can invite other specialists and talk to that. The question is when you say somebody must spend, say, 14 weeks to do a certain subject, is there a silver bullet for that formula?
Exactly.
Good question.
I don't think the answer is correct. You may be able to learn something in 4 weeks. Somebody else may be able to learn it in 8 weeks.
That's right.
Somebody else may learn it in 14 weeks, and so forth. But for us as a university, I think our task, and certainly if I talk for Masinde Muliro, our task is to integrate everybody in that equation. And we have already come up with a formula where we will only extend our next academic year, which should have started in September. We will end up extending it for about 6 weeks, so that we cater for the slower learners and maybe the middle, the sort of average learners. But we will not compromise on quality, and we want to assure everybody that Masinde Muliro considers quality as one of our core values and our anchor in our training of our students and everybody else.
Mmust has mentioned matters research, money being pumped into research in universities. How is research important to the Kenyan economy, looking at it from a university's perspective?
Oh, I think Mmust was quite right. Research is key, not only for the universities, but for the development and economic well-being of our country. So, you will have heard many times our politicians saying at independence, Kenya was at the same level with Singapore, with Taiwan, with Korea, Taiwan, and so forth. But, sadly, nobody takes that debate further than just saying it and wishing and asking what went wrong.
Yeah.
I think what went wrong is lack of driving innovation, research and innovation in our country.
Right.
So, for example, let me give you a practical example which all of us can relate to. The Juakali sector.
Yeah.
I was involved in research in the Juakali sector in the early 80s. And if you go to Gikomba, or you go to any of the Juakali sheds in any of the towns, Kisumu, Kakamega, Mombasa, that metal box that they used to produce, anapiga nyundo kila asubuhi to try and fold the mabati. It is still what they do today that they used to do in 1984.
Yeah.
And so quality has not changed. And why are people not buying these products and instead opting to buy products from China and so forth? It's not because it is trendy or sexy to buy things from China. No, it is because the average consumer now looks at quality and value for money.
Yeah.
And that is a sad state of affairs. So, and secondly, and I liked what Mmust also said, and if you allow me to link it to, to this whole concept of research and innovation. When we allowed, for many years, and sadly so, when our kids couldn't make it to secondary school, we said, go to Juakali, go to a technical school, go and do this and all that. Now that was tragic. And that is, in my view, one of the reasons our research established why our innovation could not take off.
Exactly. That's true.
And I'm glad that government is now expanding the opportunity at secondary level so that our kids must go to secondary school so that they mature up. Now, you tell me, wewe kama mzazi, mtoto wako akiwa miaka 13, 13 years, and you tell them now you failed KCPE.
Go to Juakali.
Go to Juakali. First of all, it is illegal for that person to be working in Juakali.
Child labor.
Child labor.
Yeah.
That's true.
So what do you want this child to do?
Good question.
What do you want that child to do?
And you see, that's going to be highlighted in today's meeting. I mean, this new system, where is it leading us to? Is it leading to more blue-collar jobs, more white-collar jobs?
I think, Tim, let's not talk about matters of the implementation of such. But just to allow what Prof is saying, it's very critical that as a country, we look at the pathway to change. And sometimes I look at his immediate former Chancellor, Dr. Mwai Kibaki, courtesy of honoris causa he gave to him. And that was such a brilliant man who really knew what it means to drive a country. And if you look globally, and Prof will tell you, because he works in the technical area, that the kind of skills you require for an economic takeoff are not necessarily degrees, but middle level. Economies are driven by diploma, in what came to be known as the diploma disease. But however, higher education plays a critical role in terms of bringing about innovation. And when Mzee Kibaki was expanding university education, what was he trying to do? Technical colleges or middle-level colleges had likely been neglected. In fact, right now we are telling every child that go to a technical college. However, let's look at the capacity of those technical colleges. Do they have the capacity?
The TVETs are not.
Because already we are talking about 1 million children. Last year 400,000 and this year 600,000 who are supposed to be absorbed by this technical college. Do they have the capacity? They don't have. The reason why Kibaki expanded university education was to link up the innovation world with this industrial world together with the developing of these skills, so that if you have got if you've got a diploma that is being taught at the university, an innovation is found out, the professors pick it up, they research on it, there is a marketing element, they look at how it works. Unfortunately, I'm afraid to say that if we pick up this trend that we are picking, we are likely to miss the target completely. The problems affecting higher education in this country are likely to do with, one, funding levels. Number two, capacity building. If you look at the capacity of our lecturers to deliver the kind of graduates that we want, what kind of graduates do we want? We want problem solvers. We want critical thinkers. We want innovation in terms of finding solutions to the problems that affect, even just locally, where Masina Mlilo is situated, which is right in my county. How does it help us to solve our problems? You go to Kakamega, we don't have milk, we don't have eggs. Basically in Kakamega, we don't have food, much as we are the bread basket of this country. What is the role of the university in terms of doing that? When you expand higher education, it's actually good for the economy. Because when you come and look at the important installations such as Masina Mlilo University, how many jobs has it been able to create? Massive jobs. So when you kill university education, in a way, you are equally sabotaging yourself. Actually, let me go on record, and Prof can correct me if I'm wrong. For an economy like ours, we require not a minimum of 25 million graduates. As we speak right now, we have got less than 1.5 million graduates. So what you need to do is to fix the quality issue at the university. But you don't need to kill higher education and think that you are fixing the problem. We have to drop this elitist mentality that university belongs to a few people, Professors should be a few people,
Yeah.
and make this thing an equity model, let everybody access it, fix the quality issues. If government increased funding, actually research shows that in the last 5 years, funding towards university education in this country has steadily been declining. How do you achieve innovation? Prof is struggling with that budget.
Prof, do you agree?
Yes, we agree. And if you allow me very quickly, I know time is of essence.
Yes.
Two areas. He talks real, I concur fully with what he says, the question of agriculture. In Kakamega at Masinde Muliro, we have now identified that, and we are now having innovation around assisting farmers to increase food productivity, to have better yielding crops, and better methods to harvest the foods, etc.
That's right.
Two other very quick areas, and I know earlier on you talked about the accidents in this country,
Yes.
in Salga. You see, we are having a knee-jerk reaction where you all of a sudden say there will be no movement of passenger vehicles in the night. Now, who says that is the cause of accidents in this country? You see, we need to set up, for example, an accident studies research unit, because accidents are brought about by various factors. You can find a driver comes from Nairobi, Kisumu, at this time when it is busy, he rushes to Nairobi, but he knows there are no passengers in Nairobi, and Arudi Kisumu, and then he wants to make a third trip to Nairobi because there are passengers waiting in Kisumu.
That's true.
And so there are many factors. And if we had such a study center, it would help, and that is the research we're talking about.
Yes.
And then finally, an area which I'm passionate about, sickle cell anemia. You know, the condition of sickle cell anemia, which is sadly understood by very few people in our country, Kenya. This affects mainly people in Western Kenya and the former Nyanza province. We have now set up a sickle cell research center at the university, and we have found that people are ignorant about this condition.
Yes.
And so it is that kind of thing, enhancing research. And what Mr. Kaburu said earlier on, there is a lot of money out there. We need to train our people, our researchers, on how to write bankable research projects.
Great.
Yeah.
Awesome. Two gentlemen here. I think this is a conversation that we can go on and on about, but time is not on our side. But thank you very much for your thoughts. I do appreciate you coming to the studio and just sharing your thoughts on where we will be if we put our minds together in the right direction. Great to have you, Professor Otieno, and also Mmust Kaburu. Thank you for coming to the studio. This is New Day, where we move over from matters education to the light side of the show. Later in the program, we'll be looking at